Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PR Explored. I'm so glad to be back today. I have a special guest who I'll introduce in just a minute. I just want to say that PR Explored is a video podcast where we delve into trends and topics related to public relations. I'm your host, Michelle Garrett. I'm a public relations consultant and writer. And my guest today is Steve Ryan, who is an assistant professor of instruction and program director of public relations at Temple University. Welcome, Steve.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Michelle. Should note that we were really early on mutual followers in the early days of Twitter. I'm thinking 2008.
I can't
Just
remember when I got on there, but that's probably about right.
yeah, we got on there when it was still, hey, I'm having a sandwich. And now, we'll just not talk about that. Anyway, thanks for having me on. I am what is lovingly known as a pracademic. I came from practice. Started out my career longer ago than I care to admit in the toy business. It is not like the movie Big, if you've ever seen that. And I moved from there into not for profit. Got horribly disillusioned by it, and then that led me into the longest startup segment of my career in commercial insurance and property casualty insurance, and that was a very rewarding time. Got to do a lot of cool work, a lot of interesting travel, good problem solving projects, as well as a couple of merger and acquisition deals. And it was a good period of my career. And then after leading out of the pandemic, finally got to teach full time. So here I am.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when we first met. I think I knew you were an educator, but I thought that wasn't your only thing that you were doing. So now that is kind
Yeah.
of your primary focus at this point.
Yeah, I was when we first connected, I was teaching as an adjunct,
Okay.
and I've been doing that. I've been doing that since probably about 2007, and now full time. It's what I always wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we need you. So that's great. Cause I always feel like, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but as far as universities that have PR specific programs, I feel like, and maybe this is just me here in Ohio, but I don't feel like there's a lot of them because, I had a kiddo who was kind of looking at some of that,
Yeah.
and it's just a little few and far between. It's different than when I went to school. So I feel like those programs are, maybe they're just called other things, but, or they roll them into other programs, it seems like. So,
Yeah, I mean, you'll find communication studies, and Temple has a communication studies program, OrgCom, CorpCom, although there aren't very many of those. And actually, Temple's is the only, put in a little shameless plug here for Temple University.
yeah.
We're the only certified PR degree program in the state of Pennsylvania,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
one of fewer than 50 in the world. So
Okay. Yeah. No, that feels, that feels accurate because I just, like I said, now they call it strategic communications, or,
yeah, yeah,
they roll it into other things. When I studied, it was under a journalism degree.
yeah,
But it's just different than it used to be.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm so glad you took time to spend this hour with us and tell us, kind of what we need to know, because
Mhm.
let's be honest, things are PR is ever evolving, right? It's, changes are
Mhm.
nothing new to the profession, but I
Right.
feel like right now we are really in a period of tremendous change on a number of fronts. And so we're going to talk about a few of these things today that we think would be helpful for those newer to PR, or maybe if folks have been in PR for a while but want to know, what should they focus on moving forward. And um, I know we decided to title this Beyond Writing. I think writing is foundational, fundamental to a career in PR. Always, I've always thought that, and I still think that. But beyond that, what can we, what do we focus on? So that's kind of what we're gonna.
And studies back you up too, by the way. there's
Well, that's.
there's there's a fair bit of research that's been done, not least of which by our accrediting body, that asks asks employers what they're looking for, what
Mhm,
skills they value, and
mhm.
always up at the top is writing.
And it's hard to find people who are good at writing, skilled writers, because I don't know. I've been around a few, younger pros. Some of them are fantastic, but I do
Mhm.
think, the people that I know that are teachers, even at a lower, like a high school level, would say that, the skill set is, it's not the same, because if you don't read, the writing suffers, and then the critical thinking and all. So it's kind of, we're getting away from reading and writing because we're on screens. So that's a
Well,
whole nother.
but I always tell my students, and when I kick off my PR writing class, which is it's a 3,000 level, so it's mostly juniors who are taking that course, and I always start off the semester telling them, look, by this point in your educational trajectory, you should be aware that writing is critical
Mhm,
to be successful in PR. Now, you don't have to be an award-winning writer, and most of you never will be,
mhm,
but you must be a competent writer,
mhm,
and that means you have to write grammatically correctly
mhm,
with proper diction for the vehicle and the audience and the industry that you're working for, and you have to be able to do it quickly.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a few college classes here, and I just, that's something that I focus on, is the writing piece. And I do think
Mm.
some are now saying, well, we have AI, so why do we need to write? But we're going to talk about AI. But the
Yeah.
first thing that we're going to talk about, that, when we were preparing for this today, the
Mhm.
first thing on the list that I think that you wanted to talk about was measurement.
You darn skippy I do. um, the it's and I'll preface this by saying one of my colleagues is doing some research on um, the fact that PR folks are not math people, or they chose PR because they're not math people.
Mhm,
And I teach analytics, and yeah, there's some math, but the focus is more strategic. It's more about understanding the necessity of having our communication tactics and strategies that support having those in alignment with organizational objectives, the big mission, vision, values kinds of
mhm,
things that
mhm,
organizations spend a lot of time focusing on, the things that the reason they exist. And then the measurable organizational impacts, increases in reputation, um, increased number of leads, sales, reaching sales targets, things that they measure, that they care about. Because
mhm.
spoiler alert, they don't care about likes. They don't care about shares.
Ah! I mean, aren't
We
like
do.
vanity? I mean, it's just a vanity thing, right? I mean, with the
Ye-
likes.
Yeah, vanity metrics, and don't even get me started on AVEs.
Well, and I'm gonna say, and I'm sorry to say that am still sometimes asked about that, and
I'm not surprised.
it's
I'm
so
not
hard
surprised.
because I feel like even if you work, on the client side, if you have a client that understands that those are not necessarily AVEs are not the way, the upper management is like there's something about that. There's a disconnect there because they don't understand, and I don't know if they just don't want to educate them or they can't educate. I don't understand where the disconnect is, but that's where I feel like
Yeah.
the need or the pressure or the request or whatever, that's where that's coming from.
Mhm.
Um, Instead of just trusting that, you know, PR knows what they're doing and here's how we're measuring and here's, what matters. I I don't know.
That's a perfect segue to what I have started structuring this analytics course around, and that is the AMEC integrated evaluation framework. So if nobody's heard of the integrated evaluation framework, and gosh, I've moved around so much I've gone out of focus. Um, there it is. Look at that. There's the link right up there. So
Mhm,
thank you for that.
mhm.
They I'm gonna have to fix this
Oh, don't worry.
focus there. There we go. Because otherwise, look like I look like I'm in a movie scene or something. Anyway, I introduced the students to the AMEC framework, which if you're not familiar with it, it forces you as the
Mhm,
communicator to think about organizational objectives. Why is your client, why is your company in business? Why do they exist? And then making sure that you have the discipline of walking through, gathering the necessary inputs, the information, the research, identifying and defining clearly who your audience is, developing the activities, the things that we love so much,
mhm,
the fun stuff, the tactics, and making sure that we know how we're going to measure the effectiveness of those. And oh, by the way, if those tactics are then yielding the outcomes in our audiences, the changes in thinking and feeling and behavior in them, that will help to drive the organizational impacts that our bosses do care about, the
mhm,
leads, the sales, the reputation enhancement, any of those kinds of
mhm,
things.
mhm. Well, and I mean, I don't know, if it all can be measured. That's always been my question or concern because
Yeah.
when Jonna Burke was here, who is I believe the president of AMEC,
Mhm.
she would say, PR ladders up. It's not like we're gonna measure it in its own little bubble
Right.
over here, which is I think what some people try to do, and I just don't think that's possible, and I don't even think it's possible to measure always the impact that what you're doing has.
No, and I agree with you. It's not always possible, but if we don't put the pieces in place,
Mhm.
we will never know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if we continue to focus on the vanity measures of likes and shares and even reach, which everybody obsesses about, if we focus only on those things, we're
Mhm,
not going to get we're we're, we're not going to be able to establish the bigger picture.
mhm. Yeah,
And at least this way, if we're thinking through it holistically,
mhm,
knowing what changes we need to have happen in the audience for them
mhm.
to do what we want them to do when they
Yeah,
come across our message, then we can start to maybe do some more research, more digging that will help us then understand, okay, well, did they do that because of our message, or was it completely coincidental?
yeah. I think just, like, asking more questions, what do we wanna measure? Like, what are we and
Mhm.
then benchmarking, of course, is another part of it, like,
Oh, yeah.
where are we starting from? So,
Yep.
And I sometimes I don't think those questions are asked, and which immediately then I don't you're kinda doomed to failure, or, you're not really gonna maybe be able to provide any true, measurement about what is moving the needle, or if the needle has
Mhm.
moved, or, whatever. So, yeah.
There's a lot. There is a lot. But again, the reason I like the framework is that it's comprehensive, which
Mhm.
is also frankly it's a bit of a downside because it is so comprehensive. You can get a little bit overwhelmed by it, especially when you're first starting to become
Mhm.
acquainted with it. I
Yeah.
know that's an experience that I have with students is that, do we have to do this all the time?
Right.
And no, no, you don't. But you need to, at the very least, stop and think, is what we're doing, is this really cool, new, shiny, whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
in alignment with an organizational objective? And just as an aside, one of the ways that I teach this is we look at a campaign called the Whopper Detour that was run by Burger King using geofencing.
Oh.
And yeah, it was a really cool campaign. And so they watch that after they've learned about the AMEC framework, and they, okay, now this is probably how it came about. Somebody came into a meeting and said, hey, you know what? Have you heard about geofencing? It's this really cool technology. This is how it works. I bet we could do something really cool with it. Now, you have Burger King's budget, you can afford to waste a little bit of money here and there. But
Mhm.
even still, it's a fairly large investment. So then I challenge the students, okay, now if they had the benefit of using the AMEC framework, how do you think they might have gone about looking to see if this might in fact be a good measurable tactic? And then they go through, they fill it out, and they wind up coming up with a pretty close to 100% success rate at determining what the appropriate um, measurement points would be.
Mhm. That's that's something that we didn't really have years ago, was that framework to even refer to, but I
Yeah,
think you're right that it can be overwhelming, so I'm so glad that you're kinda
yeah.
walking them through, a campaign and
Oh,
example that.
we spend a lot of time going through it. I even developed a board game.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and if you find me on LinkedIn, I'll be happy to share the information with you about the game. There's a post in my feed about it. There's some photographs of what it looks like. Um, but I created the board game to help them better understand it.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, that's like, that makes it fun, right?
Try to.
I don't know, I never thought of measurement as being fun. I think it's necessary, but, like, um,
Well, they
yeah,
definitely don't think of it as fun.
yeah.
Well, until we get to the end, and yeah, I read their final reflections at the end of the semester, and for the most part, they get it. They understand the importance. They understand why we go through the effort, um,
Mhm.
and realize that it's not um, it's not something that's going to break your brain.
Yeah. Well, that's I think that's part of it too. I think there's been maybe a little bit of fear around it because we don't
Mhm.
understand it. So what we don't understand,
Yeah,
sometimes we can fear, and therefore we
sure.
avoid it, or we get overwhelmed and just throw up our hands and run away. And so, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that those are just trying to like get over that, even is like, okay, well, this is nothing to be afraid of. We need to kind of, just look and,
Yeah.
just take the time to at least, examine, And I would just suggest that people go to the resource page and take a look at those
Yeah.
because the framework is there and it is free to just pull and
And honestly, the other thing that it's good for, it's good as a teaching tool with your clients or with your bosses
mhm,
to take, when you have an assignment, to show them
mhm,
that you're thinking at
mhm,
this strategic level, that you're not
mhm.
thinking at a purely tactical level.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that helps to separate, really excellent PR practitioners from really good ones.
I think, I think a lot of us, speaking as a PR practitioner, would like to. I mean, I'm constantly educating and trying to educate prospective clients and existing
Mhm.
clients. But it's sometimes they don't wanna hear it. I mean, sometimes I feel like they, it's just, they just wanna get the job done. They're just trying to get the budget, just trying to survive and, like, get through another month or whatever. So, it's just, I think it's a challenge, but I do think it's incumbent upon us to continue to try and do what we can as far
Yeah,
as, educating them why these things matter and why this is something to look at versus what we maybe looked at in the past, like AVEs. So,
exactly, exactly. And because I'm from Philadelphia, there's this quote has been attributed to John Wanamaker, but I'm not 100% sure that it's accurate. Um, I know I'm wasting my half of my ad budget. I just don't know which half. And and I remember when I started out in the business that, gee, that was the go-to. That was what we said. I know I'm wasting half of the budget. It's just don't know we don't know which half. And so you just threw stuff against the wall.
Yep.
And those days are very, very, very long gone.
I mean, I wish they were long gone, but I I can tell you that for
Well,
some
days when we should be allowing that, or normalizing it, I
Mm.
guess I should say,
Yeah, well,
are
I'm gonna we're kind of directing this for younger, newer, not necessarily younger, but new people newer to PR or those who are
yeah,
trying to kind of level up their skill set. And I'm just gonna say that I think sometimes you have to have the confidence, which takes time to build, to be able
yes,
to have those conversations because it kind of sounds like you're pushing back sometimes. And I mean, I am confident in my ability to do that. Once I've established a relationship with a client, I can have that discussion, at least introduce the idea of it. But sometimes I feel like that's not fair to expect with somebody who's like brand new to their role or,
sure,
just they just don't maybe have that because I'm always saying, gosh, why don't we ask more questions? And I think, well, I remember what I was like, you know, when I started out, I wouldn't have even maybe known what to ask or how to ask or had the chutzpah to really get in there and have that conversation. So I would just say
that's
I
very
would
true.
encourage people to try to find to build a trusting relationship with their manager or, someone that they can actually, have that discussion with if their
Mhm.
organization is looking at these kind of outdated metrics, way to measure their campaigns.
Yeah, and I truly do believe that by, even if you don't use the framework for fully for measurement, if you are using it for planning purposes and to demonstrate to your bosses that this
Mhm,
is this is how you think,
mhm.
I think that's in the long run a very good thing.
Yeah. I mean, you would think so, and if your organization doesn't value that, that's always something to consider too. I mean,
Mhm.
like
Yes, it is.
I just was talking to a PR student, he wanted to interview me for one of his classes, and I was saying, like, when you're starting out in your career, you may change jobs and you're always going to learn things that you love to do and things that you don't love so much to do. So it's a
Mhm.
journey and you should always like be, kind of looking at, what do you want in your next role, maybe, like just evaluate that. So this is another point. I think if
Exactly.
your organization values strategic thinking, which hopefully they do, that's a good sign, I think so. I think we've got that covered. Let's go on.
Yeah,
Talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is how can PR pros stay up to speed on generative AI? What are your
you
thoughts?
can't. You
Yeah.
can't.
Ah,
I'm being facetious, of course. Um, actually, am I?
that's what I mean.
Uh,
There's some truth there. I don't know.
there is, and it's. I read an article a number of years ago. There, the quote that I remember from it was that we're living in the age of accelerations, and I found that quote to be rather powerful, and I always talk about it when we discuss um, communication technology. And it's it, it's the probably the biggest challenge that we have at the moment, only because the changes are coming so fast and furious at this point. I remember in 2018 when I first started talking about ChatGPT in my classes, it was, yeah, this is on the horizon and it's going to be impactful, but we don't know how much yet.
Mhm.
Um, and that was because it was at the time it was GPT-2. It didn't even have the name ChatGPT.
Mhm.
It was GPT-2. And then fast forward to its release 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, and boom, it has catapulted. And the important thing for everybody to remember is there's nobody who has more than 2 years of experience in this, because that's as long as it's been around in its current popular accessible form. So nobody's got this massive amount of deep background on it. Yes, there are people who spend a lot of time studying it and very carefully analyzing it. There's a professor at Penn. His name is Ethan Malik. I definitely recommend following him on LinkedIn. He's always keeping up to date with the new models, what it can do. He's sharing research, practical applications. He's really good follow.
Okay.
That will help you to keep up with it. But at this point, you truly you need to practice with it if you haven't already done so.
Mhm.
Um, you need to understand what its strengths are, what its limitations are. Um, you need to experiment with it, um, but even more so, be comfortable with when not to use it. and
Mhm.
and the PRSA, excuse me, has a nice set of guidelines available for artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence use, and it and they've aligned the professional practices with the various facets of their code of ethics.
Mhm.
and and I think that's as good a set of guidelines as you can have,
Mhm.
um, as far as practical approach, a practical
Mhm.
schema for for using it in an ethical way. Uh, I I dived in feet first, started using it, requiring it in my PR writing class
Mhm.
very early on, because I knew it was going to be a reality. So
Yeah.
better to have the students learn a little bit, have some opportunity try these tools out
Mhm.
than to get into the workforce and not have a single clue.
Yeah. Yeah. We also, I want to touch just for a minute on the
Yeah,
legality around it.
yeah.
When it first, when all this first started a couple years ago,
Yeah.
that's what I was, one of the things I was most worried about was just if I sign an NDA and I have confidential client, data and I'm feeding it into the chat bot to spit
Mhm.
out a press release, which is what some people were doing, that could get me into trouble. In addition to just there's a number of other issues with that I see, but yeah, no, I wonder where we're at. I was kind of following lawsuits, and then it became kind of hard to keep up. So I'd love to hear, what's going on there.
Yeah, and the um, your hesitancy to put content into these training models is well, I think, well reasoned, and in fact, they an indiscriminate, shall we say, use of generative AI at Samsung about maybe a year and a half ago, I want to say,
Mhm,
um, resulted in a ban of using the open model
mhm,
at the company, as well as a couple of firings because people took proprietary information from a meeting,
mhm,
fed it into ChatGPT to summarize the notes. And now I have colleagues in IT who study how these models work,
mhm.
and the 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 risk, they have a different view on the risk than I do.
Mhm,
They insist that the models can't use information that way.
mhm,
That, but they've already been proven to plagiarize through a piece of fan fiction. Um, I
mhm,
won't go into the details because it's not safe for podcasts. But this particular fan fiction had a nomenclature around various behaviors
mhm.
that were not used anywhere else. It was a lingua franca that was truly unique,
Yeah.
and it was plagiarizing it. So it can, and it
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
Um, how much the models are changing, again, that's a little harder to keep up with.
Mhm.
And honestly, the programmers who work on these systems confess that they don't even know exactly how they work inside these black boxes that they've created.
Yeah.
So
No, it's concerning. I mean, I understand it's here. Gotta
there was
yeah.
I was going to say there was one I just saw an article today that the headline read um, that chatbots will change their behavior when they're being studied,
Mm,
which is kind of freaky. And I need to go back and read the article and see exactly
yeah.
what that means.
Yeah.
Um, but they are quite adaptable.
Yes. Well, we have a question, so I'm gonna put this on
Oh,
the screen.
okay.
For
And
those established PR practitioners, how do we counter those who feel our writing style is AI based versus how we've been trained, exposed in the corporate world?
um, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, Um,
Mhm.
sometimes we sometimes we start to rely heavily on business speak,
Mhm.
um, which could sound like generative artificial intelligence because there's frankly quite a lot of business speak that's out there that it's been trained on,
Mhm.
and because that's what it's trained on, that's what it puts back out. Um, and I'm not sure if that's what the question is referring to. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure, myself. I guess I mean, I read it as, if you're I don't know, if someone is questioning your writing style, if you're,
yeah,
an established, PR pro, so I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to
yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't know how to answer that, other than to say continuing to to make sure that what we write is focused on our audiences first and foremost.
Mhm,
Under doing the important human work, understanding the audience, understanding what their motivations are, what their resistance points are, what their needs are, and then crafting our messages so that we are trying to achieve the desired outcomes in their thinking and feeling and behavior. Again, going back to that AMEC model,
mhm.
that will help to drive the impacts that we want. So that's I hope that's a helpful, at least partial response there.
Yes. Um, Here is another topic that's related to AI. I think now we're into, an age of AI generated misinformation.
Mhm.
So what about how do we, um how can those in PR kind of manage their organization's reputation and, heaven forbid, we get into some kind of a crisis situation, based on, misinformation that's been generated, about our organization. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen already weaponized uses of misinformation, um, that rely on the or that are um, launched
Mhm,
using the capabilities of generative AI. Um, and as the adage goes, and again, it's been misattributed, but the lies will lies get halfway around the world before the truth puts its pants on,
right.
and that remains a fact, and especially in our digital connected world, we already know that algorithms favor outrage. This was testified to before Congress, um, but back 2-3 years ago, um, with Facebook, they use outrage to drive engagement.
Mhm,
So when there is something bad that happens, it's going to move a lot faster,
mhm,
unfortunately. And frankly, the best advice I would give is investing in monitoring, like
mhm,
having a good, solid set of systems in place to ensure that you are staying on top of everything that's being said about your organization. Um,
I don't wanna put you on the spot. Do you have
hmm,
tools or anything that you recommend, or is that not something you wanna get into?
well, I personally love Signal AI. Yeah, it's a really good solid monitoring system. And it is built on artificial intelligence. Predictive artificial intelligence has a good solid model behind it.
Mhm.
Um, and there are many, many others.
Mhm.
And you might find that you need a combination of tools. You might need Brandwatch and Iconosquare, and you might need Meltwater. You might like there's you might need TDIs if you do
Mhm.
it on a broadcast. Like there are all these monitoring tools that will work better for one organization or sector than they will for another.
Mhm.
Mention budgets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a tool happy person. However, I mean, I work with a lot of smaller companies that don't have the huge budgets and things for, a big agency and a lot of tools. But I mean, I think that there's no way that you can know unless you have some tool in place to listen. And yeah, I feel like, yeah, everybody can see how many likes a post gets, but they're not really that's not the same as, like, listening on social for, any potential issues or, you know, it's better to know, right away because, like you
Mm,
said, sometimes these things balloon and just run rampant really pretty quickly. So, you have to know as soon as something starts to percolate before you, so you can kind of address it.
yeah, and having a tool that has sentiment analysis capability is really important. I mean, they're not perfect, but having something in place is better than not having anything in place. Something,
Mhm,
a system that can try to suss out whether or not you're getting a lot of negative coverage or a lot of neutral coverage.
mhm. Let's see. Oh, well, we have another question.
Oh, cool.
Trisha. Thank you, Trisha. What percentage of likes or engagement do you attribute to bots?
All of it. No. I don't know. I don't have I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Mhm.
I mean, bots are definitely a problem, and they're a bigger problem on certain platforms.
Yep.
Um, I'm looking at Facebook and Twitter. I won't use the new name. Sorry, um, but less so, I think, on spaces like Blue Sky. So so I don't have
Mhm.
an accurate assessment of that off the top of my head.
Mhm. Well, let's think about okay, kind of moving on here. There were a couple other points, thinking about, those newer to the PR profession
Yeah,
that you feel are important. And one was your network. So let's talk about that.
yeah. Networks are so critical. Um, when you're thinking about how do I stay on top of new 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 innovations in generative artificial intelligence. Well, it can be hard to even start digging around on your own. Whereas if you have folks in your professional network who can inspire you and point you in the right direction, then that I think that's incredibly valuable.
Mhm.
Um, Following somebody like Greg Matusky with Gregory FCA, who is he is a big proponent of generative AI in our space, and there's a wealth of information. So surrounding yourself with people who are in touch
Mhm.
with especially with the technology and issues around it
Mhm.
is definitely a good way to keep yourself informed, if nothing else.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would say Jonna Burke is another person
John
to
Burke, absolutely.
follow. again, she's
Um,
with AMEC and shares a lot of helpful. Sometimes they do free, webinars or have they publish,
yeah,
papers or whatever that might be helpful to
yeah,
stay.
Steph Bridgman is another name that comes to mind. Um, oh gosh, there's my mind's going blank, but there are lots of good folks to follow out there. Like I said, Ethan Mollick at Penn is really
Mhm.
sharp.
Yeah, I did put his LinkedIn in there.
Martin Waxman up in Canada, he's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I was just thinking about a conversation he and I had some time ago about crisis comms, and we were talking about community, and I was thinking about that those tips still apply because if somebody goes after your organization, if you have a strong community, they're going to come to your aid. They're going to be there
Yep,
in good times and bad. So that I feel like
yes, they
community is
will.
something that is coming back, and that's not necessarily always under a PR umbrella, but I do feel like
No,
it's
but
important.
we have an influence on that, and that's actually something we talk about in my analytics class. You I hate the marketing funnel. Anybody that because it's inaccurate. It's a mountain. And the summit where we're trying to get people is advocacy, but they're not going to remain advocates
Mhm,
indefinitely. There's a nurturing process that takes place all along the way.
mhm,
Um, and most importantly is when we've invested so much time and effort in getting them to the top of that mountain, keeping them there so that they will be that community that will help defend you when things go sideways. Um,
yes.
when when the when the bad news takes off, and even with your monitoring systems in place, you're struggling to keep up with it.
Yeah, because they'll just do it. They'll just be there and just speak on your behalf, and, I mean, that
You
can
hope
and
so,
can be not always great, but, like, in that situation, I think, we would welcome somebody who was out there kind of singing our praises or kinda coming to our defense if we're having trouble trying to put out all the fires, so,
for sure.
yeah. What else? You talked about, beyond getting a bachelor's degree, maybe
Mhm.
going on and getting, going on for more education, getting a
Yeah,
master's.
yeah, and there. I'll tell you briefly my situation with a master's degree. I was very much a non-traditional master's student. I I earned my degree in 2007. I started into communication practice in 1989. So let somebody else do the math on that. So I was very much a non-traditional student. My bachelor's degree was in French. So go figure. I had learned a lot along the way, but I had gotten to a point in my career where I really needed something that said, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Mhm,
I needed the proof point,
mhm,
and a master's degree seemed to be the way to do that. And it was probably the best professional decision I've made.
mhm,
It truly did open doors, and not only that, my company paid for it, which was very nice. Um, but there are also certificate programs. Again, shameless plug, Temple University. We have a post bachelor's certificate program that also then applies to a graduate program, and I think ours happens to be um, one of the best in the country, and it's fully online, synchronous and asynchronous online, so you can study it as you will. Um, and of course, there are other programs. I will acknowledge that they're not as good as ours. Just saying.
I think I
I
didn't
mean,
realize it was so it can be remote? It can be remote
yeah,
learning? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that's
Yeah,
important,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. It wasn't when I got my degree,
Mhm.
but this particular program is. Yeah.
That's opens it up a lot.
Yep, yep, it does. And we have a really good faculty of both full-time as well as adjunct faculty that teach that program.
That's so important.
It really is. And honestly, regardless of where you get a graduate degree from, I think it can be incredibly helpful. It's less about learning those immediate skills and more about
Mhm.
building the strategic base that's so essential for applying those immediate tactical skills when you get them.
Yeah. I mean, and, I'm gonna ask you another question in a minute, but first I
Mm.
wanna ask about internships because you mentioned that as important as a
Yes.
piece of it
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
so
Flipping the script around,
yeah.
our students desperately want internships, and first of all, it's required to graduate. They have to have at least one internship, and most get multiple internships because for them it's a valuable way not only to learn more directly from a from an organization,
Mhm.
from a manager, but to put into practice what they've been learning in the classroom. And and frankly, it works very nicely too, as almost like a reverse mentorship kind of arrangement with the students sharing what they are learning in their classes with the organizations that take them on. And just to air my own personal and professional feelings, pay your interns.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is just again, as a parent, I have seen that some internships are better than others. Some are
Yes.
very like, "Go sit in the corner and clean out the closet," kind of things, whereas
Yeah, we
others
we don't
actually
approve
try
those.
to, like, get them involved in real, work, real activities that they'd be
Yeah.
doing if they were on the job, and I think that's just crucial. So, um, if you're a parent looking at colleges, make sure to ask and look into that because it's important. That's not what we're here to
It
talk about,
yeah.
but
It definitely is important.
so on this kinda dovetails right into this. What do
Yeah.
employers wanna see from new PR grads? How do you have a sense of that?
Well, definitely. I mean, there are a number of studies, and the CPRE has does a regular study. There's an article by one of our colleagues, and her colleagues, Boston University, on this topic consistently, right up there, writing. Very close behind it, analytics, analytics and measurement. They also are looking for creativity. They are looking for leadership skills. Those are all consistently among the top um, for new grads.
And on that note, what about what's the
And problem solving,
Oh, okay.
like and related to higher level thinking, higher order thinking, um, problem solving, um, critical thinking skills. Those are also
Well,
very
that's
valuable.
dying, isn't it?
Not if I can help it.
I have to laugh because I just see that. I'm seeing that. And like I said, it's not funny, but okay, so on this note, what about the ability to speak and present? Is
Mm.
that
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yep. For sure. Yeah. Communication skills, public speaking skills. Yes.
okay? Yeah, because I feel like that was something when I went to school that we didn't really get too much experience in, and, I felt like that would have benefited me 'cause kind as if you're a little bit more introverted, it can be very hard for you to stand
Mhm.
up at a meeting even and just just ask a question, or like we were talking about earlier, just having the confidence to have those conversations. So when you have that ability to have that presence, I think it's really important. And of course, we're not here to talk about personal branding, but of course, if they want to build their, their career and continue to develop professionally, they will be probably wanting to do speaking engagements and things like that. So I just think that that's something that's really impressive when they have a presence and are able to present themselves professionally. So,
There's no question about it. No question at all. In fact, public speaking was the first course I ever taught as an adjunct.
mhm,
And the university where I taught it, it was not Temple. It was a university called Arcadia here in suburban Philadelphia. They required it for every student graduating, not just comm students, every student, because they place such a high value, as you were just saying, about how important it is to be able to express your ideas in a public forum, whether that public forum is in front of 5,000 people or 5 people.
yeah. I would say just get as much experience as you can, and no, it's not always easy. Yes, you get nervous. It gets better the more you do it. Speaking from experience, as somebody who's not really, I'm kind of more behind the scenes, getting the client ready to go in the spotlight. But the more you do it, even if you're a little uncomfortable at first, it does get a little bit easier. I think you get used to it anyway. So
You do, and by starting out, like if like I had students who would truly have preferred unnecessary dental work to getting up and giving a speech. They were terrified, um, and by degrees, you can get more confident by starting with smaller groups that are friendly to you, where the stakes are not high, where
mhm.
you have the freedom to fail, quite frankly, to stumble over your words, to completely forget what you're doing, um, and have that be okay. But
Mhm.
continuing to practice and refine it and hone those skills.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be is there anything else as we close out? If anyone has a question that's listening or watching right now, please feel free to ask, but we're getting ready to wind down here a little bit. What else? What did we miss that you think is important?
Um, so I'd like to flip it around too. If anyone's watching, listening, connect with me on LinkedIn. Are there things that you think our graduates should be learning that they're not? Um, Whatever that might be, hard skills, soft skills. Let us know. I'm always interested to hear what needs and perceptions are out in the field.
Yeah, I'll put your LinkedIn up again. Uh,
Yeah, please follow me.
yeah, and yeah, I like I said, you and I go way back, and I'm just so glad you were here today. And I am really into credible sources, and I feel that you are a very credible source, and so I'm just
Well, I
really
appreciate that. I am, yeah, I'm again happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn and in real life. If anybody's going to be at the IPR Bridge Conference in DC next month, stop by, introduce yourself. I will be there.
yeah, that'd be great. Um, I want to thank everybody for being here. Of course, I thank Steve very much. In on March 19th at noon, I'll be back with Peter Himmler, the founder of Flatiron Communications. We'll be talking about how to stay on top of the evolving mediaverse as things are changing there too. So I hope that we will see you again then. And I just want to thank everyone so much. Have a great day.
Thanks very much.